What about it, YouTube? Alright, I kind of want to continue on with something I touched on in my last video. And that is that you've got the Gen X generation that I'm right in the heart of. The Gen X generation was brought up as the optimistic generation, the fix it generation, the it's all good generation, because we came out right out of the ashes of the whole moon landing. Whether like, I'm not saying it's real, but what I'm saying is that was an American propaganda, if you will, but it was a pro-American event. And then you had us getting out of Vietnam, and you had us going through the peaceful time of Carter, where we weren't in any foreign wars. And you had Reagan, who kind of brought back this regeneration of, well, you had 1976 with all that bicentennial business. And so there was this, for us, it was America's great. We're growing up in the greatest country ever. Those poor people in Russia have it so bad under communism, and communism sucks. That was still part of the business. The hide under your desk bomb routines were fading out, but still there was an idea that we were not about communism. We were the best. We had opportunity, etc., etc. Pro-American. It was pro-American. My entire childhood, there was no critical race theory. There was no Common Core. There was no social justice warrior. And not until I first got into college was there political correctness that was starting to emerge. Yeah, you had whatever feminism that came out of the 70s, first wave, second wave, that was sort of in the background. But the world was nothing like we see today. It's completely upside down from what it was in the 70s and 80s. Completely upside down. So, our generation, I would dare say, we saw the Berlin Wall come down. We saw perestroika, where supposedly it was a ruse in retrospect. But at the time, you had the fall of the Soviet Union. America had won. America had won the Cold War. America's number one. Everything's great. Then you had the little Gulf War thing, and I talked about it before. People became disillusioned with the left-right paradigm thanks to Bush and his bullcrap about read my lips, no new taxes, etc. So Ross Perot splits the conservative vote. It goes to Clinton. We start to have a shift, if you will, that not as getting anti-American yet. People stuck with Ross Perot again in '96, like I was saying in my other video. But there's a shift going on. There's corruption going on. There's Waco. There's Ruby Ridge. Then there's all the other stuff. Vincent Foster, and during that time you had Oklahoma City. There was all this crap going on that you didn't see during Reagan. And so all of a sudden domestically you start to have this, and then they were going after militias back then. So anyway, you get to this Zoomer generation, and now you've got these kids whose parents, unfortunately, as positive as I'm trying to make the Gen Xers out to be, unfortunately, many of these children we were called latchkey kids. We were, watch any of the movies at the time, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. We were the latchkey kids, but our mischievousness was on a real innocent level. And ultimately, if you watch Salt Lake City Punks, that movie, ultimately the message in it is the Gen Xer who gets into punk music in that movie, he has a conversation with his father in the movie, and his father says he's claiming that his father sold out because he's part of the corpo world, and his father's answer to him is, "I didn't sell out, I bought in." And that was so key, and that's kind of the key thing with the Gen Xers was, yeah, we were into punk music and anti-establishment, and we don't trust government, and okay, let's kind of show our butts, but nobody was getting hurt. There was no fires. There was no riots. It had its place. You could go. It was like a valve, a release valve, a pressure valve that you could just go and in the early days you could slam dance and nobody got hurt. They'd pick you up before you could ever get hurt. I weighed like 135 pounds in high school, and I would slam dance all the time. Suicidal tendencies. The Descendants, The Exploited. Anyway, so Salt Lake City Punks is something I can relate to. But it was a place, if you had this angst, if you had this teenage angst, a lot of it was expressed with and noted with Kurt Cobain. That his whole everything was that teenage angst of Generation X coming out. And a lot of it is children, if you look at his childhood too, children who feel like something's missing. Children who feel like something's wrong and they're mad. But again, back then it was mad to a point, nothing like today. Mad to a point, and then you buy in. At some point you buy in. Look what happened to Kurt when he bought in. He was forced to buy in. He was making money. So now he's bought in. Now it's all different. Now the same spirit of angst, where would it be there? You're making money. Anyway, not to go off on that, but it's a symbol sort of what I'm talking about. And as we progress into this new Zoomer generation, it's just gotten progressively worse because they've introduced more anti-American propaganda. There is no more like were brought up with the pro-American crap I'm talking about. So we could finally buy in at some point, right? Most of us Gen Xers have finally bought in. I doubt there's many Gen Xers, maybe some, but most Gen Xers are not the ones out there throwing a tantrum with victim identity politics as their number one thing in life, right? Where there's climate or transgender or Black Lives Matter or some other damn thing, anti-Semitism, whatever the complaint is. Most Gen Xers have just got with the program, found their place, and essentially, I would suggest most Gen Xers were able to achieve the American dream. The economy hasn't been that bad, right? Except for 2008, there was a hiccup, and okay. But since Volcker screwed Carter, that was still a boomer problem. Us Gen Xers, we sort of snuck through. We snuck through our childhood without much war problem and propaganda crap. And we snuck through without much social unrest and crap. It was everybody buy a Coke. I wish if I could buy the world a Coke, right? And sing in harmony and all this shit, yeah. And all the blacks and everybody and the whites and everybody's just like on the hill. And they got their candles out and shit. Okay, so we've been through this is another thing. Is like, Where's the healing gone? So we were the healed generation. We were the optimistic generation. Things can be healed. Things can be better. Things are getting better. Things are getting solved. Problems from the past are going away. The Berlin Wall, etc. So we get to this point with these Zoomers, is what I'm saying. But instead of them buying in, they've been totally taught with Common Core and all this other crap, critical race theory, etc., taught to hate this country, somehow perverted and converted into communist philosophy, and all they want to do is burn stuff down. There's no more conversation. There's no discourse. They're talking about right now, even Facebook and all this. It's like clown world times 10. It's like Trump cannot accept the presidency. We're just not going to allow it. No matter what the vote says, no matter what happens. And the excuse is that, anything can happen in the future. Maybe somebody will mail in a few votes and we'll count them up and it'll be Biden. Excuse me? So what I'm trying to say is there's people, maybe no fault of their own, but somehow they've allowed the traps to get to them, and they've got to this point of committed agitation and destruction and suffering towards innocence. And I don't know as a Christian exactly where the line is. And I'm praying to God to help me see where the line is in this. But there's an element that are dedicated, right, like I say, through propaganda by people who have typically larger noses and wear smaller hats. But what do you do with this element? Right? If they burn down your neighborhood, if they start a forest fire and it comes into your world, what are you going to do? What do you do? And they come to your business and they bust it out. You're trying to drive on the freeway. You're trying to get to the hospital. You got somewhere to go. You're on a schedule, and they're blocking traffic. What is the answer? What is the answer? They're not going to listen to anything. There's no olive branch to hand them. They'll shit on it and throw it back at you and laugh at you. So I want to know, maybe help me in the comments, where do you think the line is? And I'm not talking about starting nothing. But what I'm saying is, how much do you allow before you decide for yourself? I'm not talking about a group of people or a boogaloo or any kind of stupid shit. I don't advocate anybody joining a group. I'm just saying personally, where do you decide that enough's enough and I'm not going to take this anymore? From the hit BBC show way back anyway. I feel like I'm plagiarizing. It's something I don't know what to account for. Now, I'm not saying I'm like scared in my daily life that I'm going to have to do something or whatever. Who knows? Things are going in the wrong direction for sure. That's why I'm saying that maybe it's time to ask yourself, when's enough? If you're sitting at a restaurant and someone comes up and throws your food in your lap and takes your beer and drinks it, what is the point where you've had enough of it? And is telling you that you're bad and you're a piece of crap and blah, blah, blah. There's no excuse. And maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying that there's no... You see what's happening with these people I'm talking about just now in the restaurants. They're standing there quietly like, just trying to eat at the restaurant. Excuse me. They don't say anything, which is probably the smart thing. But I'm wondering, what do you think? How much of that? Can people not have any kind of... We've already got pandemic and mass... All right.